Welcome to Umbrella ND's groundbreaking Health Equity Panel Series for neurodivergent adults. We're bringing together diverse voices to tackle the most pressing health equity issues facing neurodivergent communities today. At Umbrella ND, we believe that true wellness goes far beyond doctor visits and prescriptions. It's about creating fair opportunities for everyone to live full, thriving lives. Our panel series explores how a person's wellness is intrinsically connected to the social, economic, and environmental factors of their life. Throughout this series, we're moving beyond one-size-fits-all approaches toward solutions that recognize and celebrate the unique experiences and needs of all neurodivergent people from diverse cultures, genders, spiritualities, religions, generations, and sexual orientations. This vital work is made possible by supporters like you. If you believe in health equity for neurodivergent communities, please consider making a donation to Umbrella ND. Every contribution helps us continue these essential conversations and build the resources our community needs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sheldon Gay. Today, I will be your moderator. For those that don't know me, I will give you a brief description of who I am and what I do. So again, my name is Sheldon Gay. My pronouns are he and him. Today, I have on my black headphones, over-ear headphones. I have black curly hair that's faded on the side and the back. I have a mustache, a little goatee. I am a black man in my 40s with light brown skin. I have on my gray hoodie of my design, which says uniquely brilliant. Behind me, I have many different personal items and favorite books. For today, I'll point out the Black Disability Politics book, as well as my pillow of my design as well, which says labels don't have to feel like pathology. And again, for those that don't know, I host a podcast called I Must Be Buggin', where I help folks learn about humanized experiences of gifted and otherwise neurodivergent people, particularly from melanated and marginalized communities. And so enough about me. Let me tell you about this fantastic panel that we have today. First, I will be talking to Max Malwood, who is the former Pacific Rim Conference coordinator at the University of Hawaii at Manoa Center on Disability Studies, where he led the large-scale International PAC Rim Conference on Disability and Diversity. He is now the Academic and Community Programs Director for the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council. Max brings a background focused in inclusion, DEIA, and education through a global lens. Welcome, Max.
Thank you so much for having me. So yes, to echo Sheldon, my name is Max Malwood. I am a male, mixed-race Asian male with long, curly brown hair, more wavy, I suppose, right now. I'm working from home currently on my couch in a striped blue polo. And yes, I'm excited to be here. As Sheldon mentioned, my background is in inclusion and education. Recently, I transitioned from working at the Center on Disability Studies to the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council, where I have more of an education-based role with high school students, and I'm excited to share more about my background with everyone today.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next up is Michael Asaku-Yeboah, who is a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor and certified rehabilitation counselor specializing in vocational therapy, neurodiversity inclusion, and workplace accommodation strategies. He has developed transformative support programs for Fortune 100 companies, improving employee well-being while generating significant cost savings. With experience across addiction recovery, mental health, and corporate wellness, he empowers individuals with non-apparent challenges to secure meaningful employment and thrive professionally. His culturally responsive, evidence-based approach bridges the gap between mental health, recovery, and career success. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, my name is Michael Asaku-Yeboah, and my background is in rehabilitation counseling, mental health, and addictions counseling, and I'm really, really excited to be here. A little physical descriptors. I'm a Black man in my 40s. I'm currently wearing black rimmed glasses, and I have bushy hair, and my background, I have gray curtains behind me. and I'm wearing an African printed shirt, brown and mixed colors. Yeah, that's a little bit about myself, and I'm really excited to be part of this panel to share my experience. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining us. And last and certainly not least, we have Mark Travis Rivera, who is an award-winning creative entrepreneur, writer, and the CEO of The Professional Storyteller, who's while using the power of story to build a more inclusive world. Mark is a disabled choreographer. He founded Mark Dance Project at 17, the youngest in the US to lead an integrated dance company, and became the first physically disabled Latinx choreographer selected for Ballet Hispanico's Instituto Coreográfico. His work has been featured in major media outlets, and he has spoken globally at institutions like Harvard, MIT, and Fortune 500 corporations. A respected DEI consultant and social justice leader, he continues to champion inclusion, creativity, and representation. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, thanks, Sheldon, for that lovely introduction. My name is Mark Travis Rivera, he, him. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia. Behind me, you'll see a sage green wall with yellow sunflowers on one side, plants and more sunflowers on the right, and a copy of my book, Drafts and a Perfect Collection of Writing. And I am a tan-skinned, bald-headed Latino with makeup, nude lip, and nice gold accessories, and this blue, teal, like textured blouse.
Thank you so much. This is exciting and a little off script. I want to also mention, particularly because today is International Men's Day, cannot forget the other book behind me that I want to mention, which is Black Boy Smile. If you haven't read that, please do check that out. And so, yeah, thanks you all for being here. Let's kind of jump a little bit into things, and feel free as well. As we discuss these things, to kind of bring in some more depth around your backgrounds. I mean, I think for those that, again, don't know your work, it's really important to hear about some of the powerful things that you all are doing. But the first question, let's start with, which is, what does neuro-affirming men's health mean for you personally?
Who do you want to jump in?
I was going to say anyone can jump in. I mean, or I can play, teacher today and pick someone. But feel free for anyone to jump in.
I don't mind. I'll go. I'll approach this question from two different angles, personally and also professionally, understanding a lot of people's encounters. So personally, I, as a neurodivergent individual, my understanding of neuro-affirming care basically means that care needs to be be it physical or mental health or general health care should be approached from the perspective of understanding me as an individual who's neurodivergent without making it about my deficit or my diagnosis, but more as understanding that my brain is a natural variation just like any other person's, and therefore my experiences are going to be different, my encounters are going to be different, and they need to be included in the care that I'm provided without making me feel othered, right? Also, from a professional standpoint, I see neuro-affirming men's health to be more something that should be approached from a very unique, tailoring the help or the support that I provide to others based on their divergence, based on who they are, based on their experiences, and make it very individualized, not a one size fit all. And also understand that I'm able to create a space that actually brings the person's strengths more than looking at just their deficits, right? And also understanding that the individual is going to come and for me to approach their issues from an intersectional approach, where I understand that individual from all angles and not just their said divergence or their said race or just because they are men, but to understand, okay, this person is a man, this person is neurodivergent, this person might be a black, white, um, uh, uh, Hispanic, or any other race, right? So to understand that individual from all those aspects and to be able to support them in that light. So for me, that is my understanding of ensuring that I'm supporting an individual from a neuro-affirming standpoint, where I am looking at everything and not just aspects of that individual. Also, one other thing to that I would highlight, because it's happened to me and I've learned from it and try as much as possible to create that space, is communication. Making sure that I'm communicating to the individual based on what works best for them. For instance, I've worked with individuals who are dyslexic and may not be able to read. So making sure that after a meeting, instead of doing a written summary, I would do an audio summary, or uh, reiterating what was discussed slowly to make sure that they've grasped it. And also, if there's an individual who learns visually, making sure that I give them something that they are able to hold on to. So those are some of the things that comes to mind when we talk about neuro-affirming men's health.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think for me, if I just may add on, is for me, neuro-affirming men's health really is about holistic health, right? Holistic health that looks at the totality of a person, not just an aspect of their identity. Because there's no separating my queerness from my neurodivergence or my brownness or my crippledness, right? I'm all those things in totality. And so, in order to have health equity and in order to really push affirming care, you have to see me for the whole human that I am. And too often we're quick to disregard someone's identity or experiences because, well, you don't look like the stereotype. You don't look neurodivergent. You don't act neurodivergent, right? And we know that being neurodivergent, excuse me, runs on a spectrum, right? It's not just one shoe fit all or one universal experience. We're not a monolithic group. And so for me, it's important that when someone is trying to access healthcare and that they have not only just an affirming experience from the way we're communicated to and with, but really understanding that neurodivergent shows up in so many different ways for so many different people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can certainly echo what my colleagues are sharing. And I think they hit all the key points. But yes, reiterating that there is no right way for any one person. I'm sure throughout this panel, we're all going to touch a bit about our intersectionalities in terms of identity as well. To speak to my personal background, I'm a queer millennial raised by a Jewish Caucasian father from New Jersey and a Japanese Okinawan mother from Hawaii. So I've been exposed to a lot of different concepts of masculinity. And so I believe part of that influenced my work to teach people to challenge those structures that they've been exposed to growing up, particularly from a male perspective, particularly from a neuro-affirming men's health perspective, and making sure that, at least for me, I feel welcomed, I feel safe, and giving that aspect back out to the community in hopes that it's also received back to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved, thank you all for sharing that. I think a couple of thoughts came up for me. One is this piece about, intersectionality and honoring all of one's elements, right? Like, yes, I am a man, but I am many other things. And so, surprise, surprise, I don't know how many times I've used this quote, but it's like one of my favorite bell hooks quotes. But I'll share it really quickly with folks, which says that, beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation, by each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. And for me, I share that often because I think what often happens in spaces is the first thing that people want to do is, like focus on one element, or, say, oh, I don't see color, I don't see race, or I don't see, whatever, gender, whatever it is. And it's like, no, like, we have to be able to honor all of those pieces to really fully humanize someone, right? You don't turn me into just, you know, a Black person or just a man or just a whatever, right? Like, see all of me, and then you will actually be able to, you know, actually there's equity in that, as opposed to, again, just picking off one piece. And so I also loved, you know, Michael, you were talking about the you know, leaning into talking about people's strengths and not just sort of, you know, a diagnosis, or, you know, what's maybe some of the limitations. I think, when you also mentioned as well the part about, making sure that it's individualized. I think that's, again, a really important piece that, I know sometimes with DEI, there's like this effort to check a box by saying, oh, we have accommodations, but it's like whatever, some sort of just very stale list of things that don't, again, account for one's individuality. And so when you show up asking for accommodations, it's like, well, no, this is the list. This is the complete list of things that you get. Like, all this other stuff is not, you know, that's not a part of this, right? And so, again, I think you all brought up some really, really important pieces, that are important. Again, even as we talk about specifically, neuro-affirming men's health, I think what we've also are demonstrating here is that men come in different flavors, right? So like, it can't just be one or the other. Right, exactly. Different flavors, different colors, all the above. So, you know, I don't know if anybody had anything else.
I just want to add, Sheldon, because
Yeah, go ahead. That's what I was going to say. Go ahead.
We keep throwing around the I word, and I don't. One, I would be remiss if I didn't give credit to Kimberly Crenshaw, the legal scholar, who coined the framework of intersectionality, and her work really centered, looking at the intersection of womanhood, right, gender and race, right, and the experiences that Black women were having with police brutality, and the reason why we were not seeing the same outcry for Black women when they were gunned down by police, is because of their gender, right? The fact that their intersectional identity, right, compounds into their experience of marginalization. So they're combating racism and sexism, right? So I wanted to say, we keep saying the word intersectionality, and I'd be remiss if I, as a man, especially as a feminist, a man who's a feminist, not give credit to Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black woman legal scholar, who coined that framework that I often use and refer to in my work. So I just want to give Kimberly Crenshaw her flowers and her credit.
Yes, thank you for explicitly, naming that, and that's, again, really important. I find myself tempted to fall down a rabbit hole, which I'm going to, you know, especially as moderator, I'm not going to do. One thing I wanted to quickly, a little bit, go off script, if you don't mind. What does neurodivergence mean to you all? Like, how are you all perceiving that term? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you know, as someone who was diagnosed later in life, a few years ago when I started doing full-time creative entrepreneurship, it was kind of weird because, like, I was born disabled, right? I'm born brown, I'm born queer. And I was like, damn, another shit I have to add to my layer of marginalization. You know, oh, can we curse on this? I'm sorry, I'm a potty mouth. I'm from Jersey originally. So I'll keep it PG-ish. And so I, you know, was like, oh, another layer of marginalization to add to my never-ending Rolodex of marginalization identities. And for me, it was both a sense of relief and a source of shame. Because one other thing that I had to explain why I'm a little quirky, why I'm a little bit different. And I'm very fortunate, and you know, in that, just like my gender expression runs on a spectrum, I'm fortunate that, you know, in the neurodivergent spectrum, it shows up differently for me, right, than for some of my other friends. I have a colleague I work with very closely. It really impacts her executive function skills, right? For me, I deal with a lot of like time gap. Time is a weird thing for me, and I often have to set a timer when I'm doing things. Like when I was doing my makeup today, I had 2 intervals of 15-minute timer set so I can make sure that I stay on track. So I don't wander and get distracted. But learning how to exist within the spectrum of neurodivergence has been really, really beautiful. But as someone who's from the disabled community my entire life and have had friends of all different abilities. It was not very different. Like for me, it was like learning how to navigate another aspect of who I've always been and not just
Mhm.
who it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the timer and I have become best friends.
I can dig it. I can dig it. What
So,
about you? Go ahead.
so I would say it's. I would explain it this way. In my situation, I grew up in Ghana, Africa, and it's so funny because I knew there was something, right? I
Mhm.
knew there was something. My parent, my mother especially, who is not very educated, um, knew there was something. She had to find ways of teaching me how to read,
Mhm.
because I was dyslexic, but we didn't have a word for it. We didn't know what it was
Mhm.
at that
Mhm.
time. Had to teach me how to read using a different approach.
Mhm.
She knew that I was a kid who was high energy and I did things very differently. So she had to find ways of bringing up a kid who did things differently until I came to the US, and did my master's. That was when I actually found the word to describe what was going on with me,
Mhm.
and also pushed me even further to really go into it and study and understand and be able to go like, oh, okay, now I understand myself and I understand that I'm going to be different from everyone, and therefore how do I help other people?
Mhm. Mhm.
So n- n- currently my understanding of neurodivergence is basically where my brain is going to be different from another person's brain. It's going to be different from how that person's views the world, experience the world, learns, does things, and it's natural. It's not uh, a negative thing. It's
Mhm.
not bad or good or either. It's
Mhm.
just what it is. As much as those we call neurotypicals would experience life with challenges, so do neurodivergent individuals would also experience life with challenges.
Mhm.
So approaching it with the mindset of, okay, this is where we are, where do we go from here, has become my approach
Mhm.
to really learning to navigate the world with my neurodivergence. So that's how I see
Yeah.
uh, neurodivergence. That's how I would define it.
Gotcha.
For me, somewhat similar to Mark, it was like a, oh my goodness, yet another thing for me to like navigate and then
Mhm.
apply to myself, to apply out to the communities that I exist within. But then it kind of came back around as well to bringing me this sense of unity, and
Mhm.
understanding, and that understanding of spectrum, and realizing that growing up, I had this internal pressure to quote unquote like solve my identities, as well as piece together the puzzle of each of them within each other before I even bring that back out to the outside world or those around me. And so finding studies in neurodivergence, applying that to myself, it helped me realize that it's not something to be solved. It's not something that is even a day-to-day consistency. It is a lifelong spectrum, a lifelong journey of change that is ever changing. And I
Mhm.
believe because I got that understanding and I was able to see that in my past in terms of those pressures and those pressures influencing me to feel like I needed to fix or adjust, it then allowed me in my other identities to also relieve myself of that pressure and
Yeah.
feel like I can intrinsically create my own definition of those identities.
Mhm.
And that then allows me in my work to hopefully help support others to do the same thing, especially in students. I work a lot with high school to college age students, and that's a common, demographic in which identity is forming and
Mhm.
self-understanding is forming. They're finally breaking away from maybe those pressures or from those environments that they're so used to help to find themselves. And so that reflectionary aspect also has just been a continual resource to me in seeing that happen in the people that I work with, and then even more so informing how I go about my future.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing that. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I am someone who is late identified. So just, a little over 2 years ago now, I realized, oh, wait, this brain works a little bit differently. And that's actually the essence of this shirt. So shameless plug, but like for me, neurodivergence and what I call unique brilliance is really about, well, when lived experience and brain wiring combine to create opportunities for wonder. And I say it that way because there's so many different ways in which neurodivergence can manifest, even within any sort of defined, or accepted label, right? And so for me, it's really about reframing this as an opportunity to learn about someone, how they see the world, what their reality looks like, and in turn, learn about our own reality, right? So there's these opportunities for wonder that are really at the core of these experiences, and so this is kind of a good segue to kind of moving to the next question, about how we as leaders, right? Like, what can we learn from these neurodivergent experiences? In your, what have you seen in your work that has helped you, further your goals as a leader?
So I would start by highlighting one thing, which is humility in our expertise, right? That is really, really important, especially in the neurodiversity space. And the reason why I say that is because quite often, especially in health settings where people have these titles that they've really worked hard to get, PhDs, masters, so on and so forth, the medical doctors, psychiatrists, so on and so forth. It comes with a lot of responsibility and also the burden of being able to explain to people and help them understand what's going on. But sometimes it also becomes the place where people, one, are traumatized, two, are dismissed, displaced, or sometimes made to feel shame. So understanding that we need to be humble in our expertise because we are dealing with neurodivergent individuals. Myself as a practitioner and myself as a neurodivergent individual, one thing I had to learn that has helped me a lot is that my experiences are only valid for me. And until I've been able to connect with someone and work with them collaboratively to understand their experiences, their challenges, I wouldn't be able to even advise or subscribe my tools, strategies that I used in my situation for them. So understanding that humility is really, really important because then you are able to really connect with that individual on a level that actually helps them. I would also highlight this. The reason why I go like working collaboratively with people is because I've noticed that in my corporate role where I did provide coaching as a reasonable accommodation for employees with various non-apparent disabilities, especially those who are neurodivergent. One of the things that I noticed was no matter what, like an evidence-based tool, everybody uses it a particular way. If I'm to, let's say, direct someone to use that particular tool, until I've worked with them collaboratively to understand the tool and to adapt that tool or strategy to who they are, it's always would not work. They would use it and initially it might help a little bit, but then sustaining that tool becomes an issue because it's not them. It's either they are spending a lot of energy, time, effort to use it the way it was created, or they would have to abandon it.
Mm.
So helping them to tailor it to who they are has always helped. And that's where the work is, right? So
Mhm.
helping people to basically tailor their needs, their requirements is going to be key. So working collaboratively with people as opposed to thinking that, oh, I'm the expert, so I'm going to design this tool and just give it to the individual. Here, these are the treatment modalities. Here, take them. These are what has been set out to. It doesn't work. And then also the last part is understanding the intersectionality of all of this. Understanding that someone may have experienced trauma, someone may have experienced a culture that sees things differently, so many aspects. They may be experiencing uh, other comorbid conditions as well, a whole lot of different things. So understanding that individual from that perspective, it becomes really, really difficult to actually support them. So for me, these are some of the things I've learned and I would always advocate for as a leader in this space so that we are able to bring a more holistic care to neurodivergent men, especially. So, yeah, these are some of the things that I would highlight.
Okay. Thanks.
I would say something similar in the sense that, and perhaps it's always coming from, my classroom kind of educational background. So I started as a middle school teacher. I've taught the book The Giver by Lois Lowry like so many times. I've read it so many times. And anybody who's read that, one of the key lessons is that sameness is not equality. And I think that spawned into my work. In terms of like diversity being seen as not just something that needs to be recognized or included, but something that we can learn from. And diversity being a representation of all those perspectives, all those varying, as we said, intersectionalities, identities, cultures, backgrounds that we can all learn from, not just within that space, but beyond that umbrella of all the perspectives we have to learn from. So you can't have a truly inclusive system if you're only listening to one kind of voice. That those voices need to be heard within that spectrum. They need to be inclusive in that manner. They need to be taken inventory of in terms of what voices are being shared, what experiences are being shared, and what is the context in terms of where that's coming from and how it's being applied to the individual. So I do like what Michael was saying about, treating these resources, these are the work that we do, not as like a one-time prescription to our demographics, but as something that we can collaborate with each individual on, not just for their betterment, but for our betterment, and ultimately recognizing that we are citizens of not just, our local communities, but then global citizens as well. And those connections, those ways we work together, ultimately contributing to each level of how we represent ourselves within this world.
And I think, and I'll add a different angle to this question than my fellow panelists here around one of the things that I'm learning is that just because I've discovered that I'm neurodivergent and I've learned my workarounds, it doesn't mean people who have to collaborate with me or work with me are going to understand my intricacies or my quirks. And so like, I have to be patient. And especially with my team, I have a small team. And bless her heart, Melissa is my left arm, my right arm, my left leg, my right leg. Sometimes she's my head because my head is off somewhere in La La Land. And she brings me in and she's like, okay, focus, Mark, focus. And she'll tell me, hey, Mark, your brain is really going a mile a minute and you are following all this and I'm having a hard time following. And so one of the things I think that we as leaders and as men, which is counter to how we're socialized to be, is that we need to be vulnerable with the people in our lives and we need to share how our brain works. We need to share how being neurodivergent sometimes can make us more blunt than we mean to be, right? Or how sometimes we have a hard time reading social cues, or how sometimes, we get thrown off when we're overstimulated, or our routine gets thrown off and it deregulates us, right? And so sometimes I'm not the easiest person to work with or collaborate with, right? And so being willing to say that, especially as a man, understanding that my male privilege may be diluted because I'm femme and queer, but it's there nonetheless, right? And it's my responsibility as a man, regardless of my sexuality or gender expression, to understand how my male privilege shows up in the world, and how my neurodivergence and that male privilege can sometimes be a friction point. And understanding that not everyone's going to understand how I work and my vision, and I need to be able to break it down so that the people who are responsible or to help me build that vision can see how to build that vision with me. And that takes patience and that takes time, because sometimes I'm like, what do you mean you don't get this? I just said blah, 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 blah. And so I think it's really important. So it's a different angle than the rest of the other panelists took on that question, but I think it's really important for us to understand that just like we had to learn and discover what it means to be neurodivergent, the people in our lives, professionally and personally, need to learn what it means to love someone and care for someone and collaborate with someone who's neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Mark, I would add to what you just, because as you were talking, I was like, wow, okay. Because one of the things that I do, especially in the corporate space, is teach people how to teach others how they do things, right? And even that approach also even helps when an individual goes to interviews and they know some of their neurodivergent traits are going to basically be evident and they do not. So they take ownership by teaching people, hey, so for me, sometimes I can really go in a tangent, or I could speak loud, or maybe and so you get people aware of some of these things so they do not judge you blindly without you even disclosing that you are neurodivergent, right? So sometimes you're able to put a spin to it where you are able to say, please forgive me if I do not make eye contact when I'm thinking. That is what I do, without you disclosing any disability if you're not comfortable with disclosing. So these are techniques that actually help neurodivergent individuals, and it is important to teach people, especially those around you, how you operate, how you interact, how you get things going so that they are able to work with you. And I really like the fact that you highlighted the vulnerability part, because as men, sometimes use the word toxic masculinity, we are trained not to show any vulnerability, right? To tough it up, to make it seem like we have it all figured out and all planned, and to show a very hard front. But then being vulnerable and disclosing some of these things actually sets us up to succeed. So thank you very much, Mac, for that. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is really, really good. What I'm dancing with is one, I got a couple of things, of reflections on what you all shared, but I also forgot to mention to the audience that we will be taking a 5-minute break. So this is like a perfect segue to the next section, but like let's kind of just round this out and then we'll take a quick break and we'll come back. But what I did want to say before we go to break is, yeah, like I think there's a couple of like really good things that you all are speaking to, which for me kind of revolve around two things: one, self-awareness, and self-love, right? So this ability to even go into an interview and share, like, here are the things that may show up with may show up with me, that may show up with me while I'm doing work or whatever. Like there's a level of self-awareness that's needed to be able to do that. There's also to talk about this vulnerability piece, right? There's also a need for self-love, because it can be hard to say that if you're still holding on to a lot of the shame that you may have experienced, in your childhood or whatever, maybe your previous job even, right? it can be hard to do that. So one, claiming those things for ourselves, but also creating spaces where that is welcomed. Because again, regardless of getting into the sometimes nuanced discussion around whether or not you should specifically or explicitly state your disability, if we're creating environments where just again showing up as your full authentic self and openly sharing that in a collaborative and communal way, like if we're creating those kinds of environments, then the explicit mention of a disability, the need is lowered, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, like that label can help me kind of get a better idea more quickly. But if I'm simply sitting with you and just saying, look, tell me what you need, right? And I'm providing any kind of accommodations, and I'm giving grace where that team building process maybe involve a little bit more friction than in other cases, right? Like if I'm just making space for that, those things just get a lot more easy. And so yeah, I think again these are really important things, particularly again as men. This call for self-awareness, and certainly this call for self-love, can be diminished. I know. I want to hold off on that. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to say about this before we take this quick break? No? Good to go? All right. Well, thank you all. Like I said, join us back here in about 5 minutes, and I promise we'll continue to chew on this and go from there. All right.
Get Cox 300 meg internet with a 2-year plan price lock guarantee. Plus
All right. Hopefully everyone had the opportunity to take a break, a bio break or otherwise. Welcome back to the conversation. So for those who may have just joined, in our previously scheduled episode, what was happening was we were talking a little bit about what it means from a leadership perspective to take into account all these sort of different ways of being neurodivergent. And then we started to talk a little bit about things like male privilege and what it means to account for that. And so yeah, I think this is a really, really good point, particularly as we kind of segue into our next question. But before we do that, I wanted to just point out the fact that, again, what it means to be a quote unquote man can be loaded, right? That could mean so many different things to so many different folks. And, there's this, tension between the box society wants us to be defined by, right? Especially via, patriarchy, capitalism, and racism that frequently bumps up against, who we are innately, and our ability to simply just be, right? And be seen without anyone's projections or preconceptions. And that, again, can make it difficult to, again, be a man. And so, the question that comes from here, though, is in your experience as a man, right? Why should neuro-affirming healthcare be considered a health equity topic?
I can start with that one. I think it should be considered a health equity topic because having access to proper care is a matter of equity. So neurodivergent men in particular, we experience higher rates of misdiagnosis, delayed care. There's also prevalence of avoidance of the healthcare systems and settings just due to those stigmas, due to sensory overwhelm. So if systems remain designed to cater to just some and not all, then those men are pretty effectively being excluded from equitable care. So, I go back to that fairness is not sameness statement that I shared in the previous section, but it's simply a matter of equity in terms of how any identity, any perspective, having access to proper care is a matter of equity. And I think that's often forgotten. So that's kind of like my point blank answer to that. But
yeah. And I think too, and I said this in my promo video for the event that I did, and I'm gonna misquote myself. I think, but if I remember correctly, it was about the idea that affirming equitable healthcare for men, especially neurodivergent men, is not about simply having access, right? But really having access to care that affirms us in our fullness, right? Goes back to what I said earlier, right? That they're not just saying part of us, but all of us. And let's be honest here, right now in this country, in the United States and around the world, men, we're in a critical juncture for men. Men of all backgrounds, men of all different identities, neurodivergent, queer, straight, trans. We are in a men's crisis right now, right? Where men are probably one of the most loneliest, disempowered group we have in our country right now. And I think that for too many folks, they get so caught up in male privilege and get caught up in the patriarchy of it all that they forget that there are people within that male privilege and patriarchal society that are really struggling and really need support. And rather than understanding how to address health equity or health inequities for all gender and gender identities, we've become so the Hunger Games, right? We've been pushed and pitted into each other with factions, and it's like, it's us versus them. When really, when the universal design, right, disability justice aesthetics around this idea around universal design, that if something is designed for the most marginalized, it improves the experiences for all people, right? And I need to shout out Alice Wong, an iconic disabled rights activist and writer who recently transitioned. And while I didn't have the chance to meet Alice personally, we have a lot of mutual friends, and her work around being able to have a dignified life, right? And to me, health equity is the ability, especially in the wealthiest country in the world, to have a dignified experience when navigating healthcare. And we're not even talking about the economics of healthcare, right? We're not even talking about the financial barriers, but just like having a humane experience when we feel like the people working behind the counter, from the receptionist to the provider to the nurses to the pharmacists, right? That they see us and they treat us humanely, right? Not because of not in spite of our differences, but because of that difference, right? That we are allowed to just be, and that our differences are not seen as a deficit or a detriment, right? But just a different lived experience.
Yeah.
So I would want to put a whole perspective to it, right? And I'm doing this because I also want to bring in the I want to from looking at it from a global standpoint, right? Where even in the Western world, where we have all these, and we are even able to sit here and talk about equity. One of the main issues, I would give you an example, is diagnostic disparities. In the Western world, we've done a lot of work to get to this point where we are able to understand these things. Could you imagine a young man in Ghana, West Africa, who does not have any idea what is going on? As a kid, struggled in school. They were told that they were not academically good, in quotes. They were made to feel like they were not blockheaded. They could not learn. And therefore, there's no resources or any support for them, right? And growing up, the culture is also very masculine, right? Where men are expected to navigate life in a certain way. That kid is going to grow up with so much difficulties because, one, they are not diagnosed, let alone to understand who they are, let alone to even know what kind of support resources are going to be available to them. Zero. They're going to also grow up, get to a point where access to various services and support are also not going to be available to them. They are going to grow up understanding aspects of themselves and then shying away from other aspects of themselves because they are ashamed, they are put down, which would impact their mental health. Because of this, one of the things that myself and a very good friend of mine, her name is Gloria Asaku-Yeboah, have done is starting a nonprofit by name Neuronest Foundation. It's going to basically support like the population in Ghana, especially young people, helping them to understand what neurodiversity is, helping them to begin to explore what kinds of diagnostic services are available. And also, we are going to be working very closely with education institutions to train teachers to be able to help identify individuals who might need services or who might need to get a diagnosis, and also begin to help teachers tailor learning materials into various learning styles that supports the individual. We believe that doing this is going to also increase access to health because people are now going to understand that these are things that are very common. These are things that anyone could have and not to shy away from. And there's going to be support for them because quite often these are the individuals that are predisposed to begin experiencing various mental health issues that escalate, be it experimenting with substances because they are experiencing either sensory or either cognitive issues, or be it other health concerns that are mostly start as a psychosomatic symptom, but then it's blown into a health crisis. So these are some of the reasons that I believe that ensuring that there's health equity available for everyone and creating a space where neurodivergent individuals are able to bring their authentic self to seek healthcare is really important. So
Yeah.
And something that Michael's point brought up for me and reminded me of, right now in the U.S., we're seeing the Department of Education's special education divisions be dismantled. We're going to see healthcare premiums go up. We're going to see that the federal government is divesting from its people, right? And all of these things have, for me as a disabled person, it was the physical therapy I received during my school day that helped improve my mobility, right? It was access to physical therapy. It was access to my orthopedic braces. It was access to a speech therapist. It was access to occupational therapy that helped improve not just my ability to communicate verbally, but my ability to physically move around the world. And so when we talk about, diagnosing or diagnostics or access to information and we have to understand that right now, so many of us are being disenfranchised by the federal government. And it is a very dangerous time for misinformation and disinformation. And which is why, panels like these are so important. And it's why it's so important that we continue to tell our stories, because we need to humanize the marginalized. And one of the ways we do that is by sharing our stories, right? And so I think that it's really important that we understand that health equity, to me, is not just about the experiences we have in healthcare, but it's access to support that we need in order to not just simply survive, but thrive.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, so many different things that came up for me. I think, first of all, this key part about what happens to the marginalized, under these kinds of conditions, right? And what happens to those who, going back to this whole point of like, what does it mean specifically for men? Like, what happens to those who are looking to escape, systems like patriarchy, right? That are kind of overlooked, right? As the kind of like trash compactor like gets tighter, what happens to those groups who, like you said, you're losing services, people are, kind of turning up the knob, as it were, on some ways of believing that we thought we were done with. Like what happens in those scenarios. And a lot of times, right, what happens is you do get extruded out, through that system. And it's a really sad scenario, which again makes it so important, like you said, to have these kinds of panels, to bring awareness, to humanize the experiences. I'd say as well, because one of the challenges is that, yes, we all have male privilege, but they're like, all of our humanity still deserves to be honored, right? And so making sure we don't lose sight of that is really important. Before we kind of transition into another question, one of the other things I wanted to, again, kind of go a little bit off script and tap into is, I've heard people talking about some of the different ways in which they've experienced masculinity. I don't know if anybody wants to kind of maybe share some of the ways in which masculinity has shown up in their life, and how that has influenced the way that they reflect upon this work now. I think that would be an interesting thing. If anybody has anything to say, I mean, maybe I'm.
If I may say, and this is going to sound really, this is a very personal story of my own experience, but I think the first time masculinity showed up in my life, it was through my father's absence. It was the absence of masculinity, the absence of a male model or a male figure or a father figure in my life, was the first time I realized I didn't want to be that kind of guy. I don't want to be that guy. That guy who was abusive and sexist and fathered 8 children with 5 baby mamas, right? And so, like, for me, it was the lack of a male model in my life that showed me who I didn't want to be. And then it was, people like Robin Williams' character in Mrs. Doubtfire. This man wanted to be a father so badly that he would go into drag an old woman. And it was the first time I ever saw queerness on my television screen. Right? That this man loves his children so much that he would transform gender and become this old woman just to be near his children. And what that taught me from a young age, as someone who didn't have a father growing up, was that true love will make us and force us to reckon with who we want to become. And so for me, and it wasn't until I got to college and started studying gender and sexuality, and Aubrey Lorde talked about allowing her son Gus or Guy, I'm forgetting, I think it was Guy, she allowed her son to define his own manhood. Not through the prism of feminism or lesbian poet warrior that she was, but she would allow her son to define his own manhood. And it was in that passage, in that writing, in that documentation, where she says that it liberated me, that it gave me permission to define my own manhood for myself. And so what does manhood mean to me, right? It means that I am in tune with my emotions. It means that I value my intellectual prowess just as much as I do my physical prowess. It means that I recognize when I'm being toxic and I take accountability for my actions and I apologize, and that apology is met with changed behavior. Is it recognizing all the ways that my maleness allows me to walk into a room and people will be quiet when I speak, right? In ways that they don't respond to my women colleagues in the same way, right? Even despite my femininity, right? Like this may get their attention and they want to dilute my male privilege, but the moment I open my mouth, they're quickly reminded that I'm a man. I'm just 31, right? And so this idea around daring to be myself and daring to be in my manness, and also not allowing anyone to negate my manhood. Right? Yes, I'm not conforming to societal norms of manhood in this time period. Mankind, where men wear wigs and men wear heels and men wear dresses, and depending on what culture or part of the world you're in, how I look is not a detriment to my manhood. It was just a different expression of it. And so for me, I've had a lot of positive male models in my life. And so I've been very blessed to have people show us tios and uncles and chosen fathers in my life. But for me, the first experience of masculinity was the lack of a father figure. And that taught me more. It also led me to lots of therapy, but his absence taught me more about what it meant to be a man than I think his presence could ever teach me.
So, Mark, would piggyback on what you said, because in my whole life, I would tell you that the most men I've admired most in my life happen to be men who were brought up by a dominant female who also understood how to create the space for a man to be who they are by one being in tune with who they are and being in tune with their emotions, being in tune with the community around them, and also knowing how to lead with compassion, with kindness, with a steady hand and a steady vision, and also knew how to ask for forgiveness when they were wrong, right? So for me, masculinity happens to be something that is not what is either depicted in a movie or in what is being written about what we usually would describe as toxic masculinity, but one that brings a lot of the elements that actually makes a man who they are, more than it just being the aesthetics, right? So that's my understanding of masculinity, if I would put it in a nice way.
I think I connect with both of you to certain extents. Like one aspect of masculinity that growing up was still is somewhat of a struggle for me, is that I had this dichotomy between the two cultures of my background. So I saw one side where masculinity was being, and confidence within masculinity was being represented as staying out of the spotlight, being somewhat quiet, being somewhat humble, not taking, only speaking when needed. And the other side of it represented masculine confidence as being loud, being ridiculous, not having too much shame about the way you act and as a male. And I think, we brought up things like media. Growing up, I interpreted a lot of life through media. And I think, we were talking about performing drag in media. I think back to like the Birdcage, where that kind of gave me a sense of, my identity, my masculinity, it doesn't need to be performative. It can be expressive, but it's not something that I need to perform for others. And I think that's a way of that I recognize, like maybe misinterpreting even the expression of masculinity on those two sides of my family. And that allowed it to be something more intrinsic for me to develop rather than something that I felt like I was just copying. So yeah, I really appreciate my colleagues' sharing of that.
And isn't the Birdcage wasn't also with Robin Williams?
Yeah, exactly.
Robin Williams was ahead of his time. Okay, may his soul rest in peace.
Yeah, we'll do a Robin Williams panel another time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right? We got to circle back for the Robin Williams panel.
Yes, I think it was neurodivergent too.
Oh, listen, there's hands down, 100%. Thank you all for sharing that. And as you were talking about, really, again, this this realization that masculinity is this construct, right? Like there are these things that, you know, even between cultures, right? Like, you know, again, you live amongst one group of people, what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine is something, you know, distinctly different from, you know, another culture. It reminds me of one of my favorite classes that I took when I was in undergrad, which is called Deviant Behavior, which brought up a lot of that same kind of like awareness that, oh, wait a second, like, you know, even something so simple as, you know, when you go to the beach as a man, if you're here in the US, you have swim trunks. If you go to a lot of like European countries, you know, Speedos, and it's like on either side, people are going to look at you funny if you're not kind of aligned. And so there's like, it's not as if there's sort of some sort of innate way of being. There's a wrestling, a grappling, an awareness to be had around that. And yeah, I love, you know, Mark, when you talked about Audra allowing her son. I remember, you know, reading about that too, where it's like, you know, you get the opportunity to define this, you know, for yourself. And the last thing that I'll just share, because I'm finishing the book, which I'm going to have to go back through because it's so dense, is the book Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. So if folks aren't aware,
super dense.
yeah, it's like super. As I say, I'm about to go back through. But
gender theory is not for the faint of heart.
No. Listen, that's exactly it. So it's like, you know, as sparkly as I consider my mind to be, I'm still like, yo, no, this is going to take 2-3 times before I fully grasp, you know, every element. But, you know, again, a key part of that, you know, really just painting the picture of how, you know, gender is this even, you know, what sex is this construct, right? And so kind of being able to dismantle that and see it for what it is and claim it in our own way is super important. And so as we round out, looking at the time, I'm sorry, did somebody?
I'm just saying, I can't believe how fast the time has gone.
Yeah, I know. Right. So let's, you know, try to round out in this way, which is, what do you all feel is missing in current men's health approaches as it relates to neurodivergent adults?
I'll say for me, what's missing is like a lot of proper training, like at a ground level. So having like these practitioners with the skills and knowledge needed to recognize when masking is happening, to understand communication differences, to help develop like that self-trust, so that holistic approach where it is really about the whole person. And I think when I work with neurodivergent men, when I work with many people of many identities, a lot of the similar sentiments is that they're very tired because they are hoping that this kind of middle ground, this like, I'm going to walk halfway, expecting them to walk halfway back to you, isn't necessarily happening to a large prevalency. So I think what is also happening, and what I think Mark maybe touched on earlier, is like this element of patience as well. And having that effort being made to address these individualisms about ourselves, to recognize that there is this large spectrum beyond just identity, but for every single different person out there, and having practitioners and just care, like quantity of care in general, to properly address the diversity that we have on this earth.
Yeah.
So I would approach it from 4 areas. One, understanding that neurodiversity, or being neurodivergent, it's not only from the developmental standpoint where we are only focused on kids, but to begin researching and putting treatment modalities and services along, like age gaps between age groups, where we are able to support individuals at every stage, regardless of whether they are kids, they are young adults, they are teenagers, they are middle adults, whatever, right? being able to support them whenever or at every point in their life when they feel like, okay, now I need to, or even help them to get to that point, and also provide them with evidence-based treatment services that would help them to navigate the realization that they are neurodivergent.
Mhm.
The other thing too is helping professionals understand that there is a lot of relationship issues with neurodivergent individuals, and know how to navigate it, because quite often it's always approached from a pathological standpoint, whereas it is mostly just understanding neurodivergence and understanding that there are certain individuals who may express their emotions in a certain way. It might come off as being very passionate, very deep, very confusing. But then once you have the understanding that a neurodivergent individual might express their emotions in a certain way, you are able to navigate it very well and bring a good resolution. Intimacy is another part that goes with that part.
Mhm.
Intimacy, helping the neurodivergent individual navigate these very delicate issues very well, right? Cultural responsiveness, understanding that everybody is coming with a culture, regardless of whether you are in a dominant one, a minority, or one that is not even known by anyone. Um, Learning to create the framework by understanding that individual's intersectionality, and creating treatment modalities, treatment services that actually cater to these things. And then also, one other thing too that I would want people to, that I think is missing, is the preventative standpoint, right? My whole later part of my career has been with this,
Mhm.
where I'm able to work with companies to set up these coaching programs that actually support the companies by saving them tons and tons and tons of money. Why? Because one, you providing these preventative services such as coaching for individuals, and I wouldn't just limit it to neurodivergent individuals, but all individuals with non-apparent disabilities. What you do is actually, one, you increase productivity. Two, you reduce the reliance on various uh, um, uh, insurance services that are not needed, right? For instance, a lot of individuals who are working in workspaces that are not neuro inclusive would have interpersonal challenges, would experience burnout that would
Mhm.
would manifest in psychosomatic symptoms, headaches,
Mhm.
backaches,
Mhm.
migraines, panic attacks, and all these individuals would immediately run to emergency care or would go see their doctors. So
Mhm.
they are basically using their health insurance, and it's driving the cost up. Also, they would take short-term, long-term disabilities, whereas that wasn't needed. If they are to work with a coach who understands neurodiversity, they will be able to help them to identify the warning signs and help them to put tools and strategies in place so that they do not get to the point where it becomes a crisis, right? The other
Mhm.
thing too is that they will create a space that is neuro inclusive by training the managers how to create neuro-inclusive workspace by providing them with some best practices, some tools, some strategies that the manager is able to create a space that individuals able to thrive in. The other thing too is that they learn new ways of navigating the boring standard of practice to be able to get to the goal, which increases productivity. And then also these individuals are able to invent better than the standard, because if they are spending a lot of time just trying to fit in the box, they have zero time to think out of the box. They are thinking about how to fit into that box as opposed to how to basically navigate around the box. So it increases your ability to innovate and come up with new ideas that are novel, that nobody has ever seen before, that makes the company more money. So these are some of the things to me are really, really, really important if we want to create a neuro-inclusive space that supports the healthcare of neurodivergent individuals, especially men. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't have to answer this question if we're running low on time, but I just want to say, one of the things I'm speaking to men who are neurodivergent more so than talking about the healthcare aspect, is you have to learn yourself. I think one of the things, 3 years ago, I took the leap of faith and became a full-time creative entrepreneur. I started with $0 in my savings, a lot of credit card debt, and from a deficit standpoint. And halfway through the year 3, my business crossed a 6-figure mark, and we're on track to cross it next year as well, in the first half of next year. And it's, my entire life I was told I would never be able to do what I want to do with my life. I was told that I would never be able to become a professional dancer and choreographer because I was disabled. I was told that I wasn't a good enough writer to be a journalist, that I should give up on trying to be a writer. I was told that I wouldn't be a professional speaker, that I wouldn't be able to do X, Y, Z, right? And my entire life has been about proving those people wrong. And I'm so thankful to be at a stage in my life, both in age and career, where I no longer feel the need to prove them wrong, right? I'm simply honoring the calling of my life. And what I constantly have to navigate is, now that I am the blueprint, because too often we are our blueprint in our communities, right? When we're first gen, when we're the first one in our families to graduate high school or college, or first gen American, or first to come to America to pursue a master's degree, right? Or first to be, the youngest person to create an integrated dance company in the US, whatever the case may be, right? We are often the blueprint for ourselves and our communities. And so, I think it starts with us understanding in our communities how we're addressing little boys who might seem hyperactive, or little boys who just can't seem to sit down and be focused, right? And rather than beating obedience into them, right? Rather than punishing them into obedience, finding different ways to approach communal care and familial care, right? Being a parent, right? And caring for these people and saying, that child doesn't need medication, or that child isn't just being wild for no reason. We need to address how that child is navigating the world and how he's learning. And too often, I've seen so many men, young men especially neurodivergent men, fall through the cracks of our education system because people would not see beyond the behavioral disruption.
Yeah.
Right? And this is especially true for Black and brown boys in America. And when Black and brown boys are often matured, right, and even though they're appeared to be a threat and made older than they actually are, right, to justify police brutality, or a vigilante who just wants to kill them because of their skin color, it is so important that we recognize that we need to start seeing little Black and brown boys in our communities and our lives, not just as hyperactive, bouncing off the walls, but really ask yourself, what do they need? And I assure you, they don't need more screen time. We go back to really supporting each other, and supporting each other, and getting back to our communal way of living. I always say, of all the things that white supremacy culture and slavery and colonization took from us as people of color, the one thing I think that was the most detrimental was our communal way of living. We have adopted the white supremacy culture and years of indoctrination around this idea of individualism. Well, if you just pull yourself by the bootstrap, The American dream is within reach. If you pull yourself by the bootstraps, you too can make it as an entrepreneur, or you too can go on to lead this office or become this certified professional or get your master's degree or doctorate degree or become an author, whatever the case may be, right? And that's not true. There has not been a moment in my life or my career that has been possible on the merit of me, myself, and I.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in rooms right? My name has been spoken in rooms I've never entered because others have dared to speak my name and suggest I get into those rooms, right? I've had opportunities given to me because someone said, I remember meeting this person there. He needs to be here, right? So nothing about my life, or nothing about me, I should say, makes me extraordinary, right? It is just that I have been given the opportunity to have a community of people who have seen me, who see me in the fullness of my humanity, and they believe in what I'm trying to do. And so we as men need to support each other more vocally, right? We need to hold each other accountable when we see wrongdoing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not enough just to turn the other way when
Mhm.
your fellow brethren is being a dickhead. It's not enough to say, oh, that's their problem, or my homeboy's cheating on his wife, or my homeboy's beating up his girlfriend next to me. That's not my problem. No,
Mm-hmm.
we are a brother's keeper. And if we are going to talk about equity and we're going to talk about improving the experience of neurodivergent men, then it has to start with us getting back to each other.
Yeah, and I apologize for stepping on your toes a little bit before you started. Particularly, that was, you know, it was a great, response, and really, like I said, everything that you all shared. And to that point, I'm going to be following up with all of you individually to build on this, because there are aspects of my work that I think each of you can help with, and I certainly want to offer that, you know, in return. So as we go ahead and close out officially, you know, if you all just want to take a couple of seconds, tell folks, you know, real quick how they can find you, and if you have any like one last kind of like parting, note, please do share it.
Sure. You could find me on LinkedIn. Just search me by my name, and also you could. My company is Evolve Vocational Services. So evolvevocational.com, and and you're able to find me there. So, and parting message. If you're neurodivergent, just understand that it's important to lead by your strengths more than to focus a lot on the deficits. And if you're neuro divergent, what do you call it? If you're someone who's not neurodivergent and you just support neurodivergent individuals and their causes, creating spaces that allow people to be their authentic self is really, really important. So it's beautiful to be neurodivergent, and I would never want to ever come back without my divergent. So that's what I would just put that. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matt?
Oh yes, I'll share. You can find me on LinkedIn as well via my name, Max Malmud. As I mentioned, I work for the Pacific and Asian Affairs Council now. However, my prior role with the Center on Disability Studies, I was the PACRIM conference coordinator, and they are currently setting up for the conference. I believe it'll take place in May this year, and it is such a wonderful space to come together. When I was more involved as the coordinator, having those moments of people come up to me with so much just emotion in them, and having a space where we truly can all feel completely welcomed, completely safe to, you know, advocate for ourselves, share about ourselves. It's been such a special opportunity for me. So I really encourage anybody interested in that, or anybody who also wants an excuse to come to Hawaii, to look into that. And you can do so by just Googling PACRIM Conference 2026. Something I neglected to mention earlier is that I'm also the Hawaii representative for a Japanese exchange company called the Tomodachi Initiative. That's kind of a side role I take on. So anybody that is interested in U.S.-Japan relations, international relations, and education in regards to an inclusive DEIA perspective, please feel free to reach out to me. And in terms of parting words, I think a core element of my work, my personal and professional passions, is just encouraging people to expand their perspectives to a global or even a universal perspective. I think we all, we naturally look at life from our own lived experiences, from the context of what we know, which is often limited to our lifetime. However, there's hundreds and hundreds of years of ways things have been done that are often neglected or are lost knowledge. So I really encourage people to just expand and really look at their approach to things through the spectrum of not just the communities they are a part of, but also the communities that have come before us, whether that is indigenous cultures, whether that is just simple decade eras that worked in different ways than we're used to now. There's so many ways to adapt those to our different individual lived experiences now. So. And thank you just for having me on this panel again.
Yeah. I'll keep it brief. I know we're over time. You can find me on my website, www.marktravisrivera.com. You can get connect with me on LinkedIn. My handle is Mark Trav Rivera on Instagram. You can. My website is the best way to go because you can get my book. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can check out my work. And my parting words for anyone who's watching this conversation is, authenticity is a daily choice. Every day, I hope you choose to be yourself so that people can see you and hear you and know you for who you truly are. It's a daily choice, not always maybe the easy choice, but it's a choice that I make, and I hope it's a choice that you make too.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for being here. It's my honor to just share space with you all.
Moderating. Thank you for moderating.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And hopefully everyone reaches out to you all. Again, I definitely keep an eye out for Sheldon being one of those people. But yeah, this has been a blessing. Thank you to Umbrella for setting this up. And yeah, take care everyone and see you later.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us for this important conversation. The insights shared today are just the beginning of the work we need to do together. Ready to be part of the change? Join our community of advocates, professionals, and allies working to create a world where every neurodivergent person can thrive. Visit our website to learn about upcoming panels, access resources, and connect with our community. Your support makes this work possible. When you donate to Umbrella ND, you're investing in health equity, supporting vital research, and helping us amplify neurodivergent voices. No contribution is too small. Every dollar helps us build a more inclusive future. Together, we're building health equity one conversation at a time. Until next time, keep advocating, keep learning, and keep thriving. Visit umbrellaopensdoors.org to donate and stay connected. Thank you.